Welcome in. Here we go. Let's see here. Got anyone on yet or not? We'll find out. Get this set up here. Right. Well, hopefully you guys are doing okay. I am using a new thing here, so hopefully this audio is working out. I tested it earlier and it should be working. So I finally have audio back. And I may do a video on that because it took me two or three now to get audio. So finally I have audio. All right, hold on 1 second. Let me bring the lighting more toward me. All right, that'll work. Okay, like I said today, so I was gonna get on, and I made the video yesterday to do a live here, and I definitely want to say that I'm going to talk about jobs again. So I did one in my live stream number 2, which I really enjoyed talking about because that was about interviews. So we're going to go more into that right now. So this is something that I would strongly suggest that you do if you want to do uh, any kind of looking for a job, interviewing, anything like that. So the first thing you do, as I mentioned this before, is so if you do end up getting a job, you got to figure out. Many people don't look at the handbook. So, for example, if you look at the handbook, it will tell you everything you can and cannot do. So many companies will try to F you out of stuff because people just sign the handbook and they don't read it. So, for example, if you read the handbook and it says you work 6 hours, you have to take a minimum of a 30-minute lunch. If you work more than 8 hours and you don't take a 30-minute lunch, it's suggested you take an hour lunch, but if you don't take a 30-minute lunch, they are going to take 30 minutes out of your paycheck. So basically, you work 30 minutes for free. If you don't read the handbook, guess what? You don't know that. So that's something you really want to pay attention to. Hold on 1 second here. Let's see if I get this more centered. All right. And that's something you really want to pay attention to is read the handbook when you go work somewhere. And it's something you can definitely want to try to do. And honestly, it is something that you really want to pay attention to because not only handbook, it tells you what you can and can't wear a lot of times. And then something else that it does tell you about is are you exempt or non-exempt? So in the United States, this is specifically the United States. I don't know laws anywhere else, but in the United States, okay. Normally, an exempt employee is someone like a salaried worker. For example, they work 40 hours a week, they work 70 hours a week. They're going to make the same amount of money. In my experience, this is not always the case. This is not always the case. This is not always the case. So I said this 3 times. So if you're an exempt employee and you're a salaried worker, some of the time, more likely than not, you're going to have to work more than 40 hours and you're not going to get paid extra for it. But usually in quarterly, for example, if the business does really well or something happens, you are more likely not going to receive a bonus. So this is not always the case, but it is something you want to pay attention to. So if you're an exempt employee, please do keep that in mind. More likely than not, that is the question you want to ask in an interview. If you're a salaried worker, is okay, if I'm a salaried worker and I have to work all these hours, am I going to get a bonus? Am I not going to get a bonus? How's this work? That's kind of what you want to see. Are some companies they do bonuses, and bonuses may not necessarily be monetarily. They may be time off. For example, sometimes, honestly, for me, I'd rather take time off. I'd rather get vacation time than I would actually money. That may sound crazy to you guys, but I prefer vacation time because I can use that money. It's like, okay, that's fine. I could just put it back and save it, which is nice. But I'd much rather have vacation time than I would money a lot of the time. That's my opinion. But some people they may not. It just depends on whatever you want. But that's a definite question you want to ask is if you're an exempt employee is okay. This is what I'm looking for here. Okay, number 2 that you want to look for in hours is if you're not an exempt employee. So if you're not exempt, you have to figure out, okay, if you're not exempt, so what that usually means is if you work 40 hours, after 40 hours, they're going to pay you time and a half. That's something you really want to pay attention to. Okay. Different companies have different ways of doing this, but generally it's always the same. So what you want to do is figure out, okay, so if I am going to get this job, all right, and you know, in the interview, this is a great question to ask. Am I going to work more than 40 hours a week? And if they tell you yes or no, then if they tell you yes, then okay, then this is pretty much an easy way to ask that. Or you could say in theory, and then you can go like, okay, so if I work 40 hours a week, what is the process I have to do overtime? Many companies, they're not just going to let you work overtime. Many, I mean, this is not for all of them. Once again, this is a generalization. Many companies, there is a strict process on how to do this. You can't just walk in and say, hey, I want overtime, and y'all give me overtime. That's not generally what happens. Generally, you have to go through some kind of process. And more likely than not, it's inside the handbook. So that's something you really want to pay attention to is like, okay, dude, like the handbook that you have here, this is really what you want. You want to pay attention to, okay, uh, how am I going to do this process? Do I need to give it to my supervisor and then sign it off? Do I need to submit an application online to do it and then you sign off on it? How is it? Because I have seen this before. I have really have seen this before where someone has gone through, not followed the handbook policy, and then get kind of fucked over on their hours by a certain way. It's like, oh, we can't do that kind of thing, and it's just like, yeah, it was just a giant drama fest. So in order to stop that from happening, pay attention to the handbook. That way you know what is going on or what you are expected to happen. So please do keep that in mind. And on top of that is you really want to figure out the process of how to take leave and how not to take leave. Many places you could just tell the boss and that's it. They write it on the calendar, you fill a slip, you sign it, they sign it, that's it. Now a lot of places nowadays are you email the boss and then you also do it online. So it's approved online and it's approved in person. So you have like a two factor authentication there between the boss and the employee. So that's another thing you want to do. You don't want to get fired or fucked over by, oh, because in the employee handbook it may say if it's not approved online, it's considered not approved. So please do keep that in mind. Like when you're reading the handbook, that some companies they're going to have different ways of doing that. So that's something you really want to pay attention to. And something else that I recommend is when you look inside the employee handbook is figure out basically what if you're working part time. This is for part time work. So if you're working part time, you're looking in the handbook. A lot of times it will define what a part time worker is. Some companies it's 28 hours. Some companies it's 32 hours. Some companies it's 35 hours. So you kind of figure out okay, if I'm going to be on part time, and this is a great question to ask in an interview as well, is if I'm working part time, what is the maximum hours that I'm allotted? So, like I said, some are 28 hours, some are 32 hours, some are 35 hours. It depends on the company. So, you really want to pay attention to that, and that way it's much easier for you to kind of like, okay, what do I need to do and how many hours I need to work? That's really important. And that's much easier for you to figure out than anything else that you could possibly do. So, please do keep that in mind when it comes to that. Okay. And I would strongly suggest as well that you also pay attention to the hierarchy inside the company. A lot of the times it'll have the mission and the goal set. So pay attention to the mission and the goal set because when it comes time for you to be audited, like for example, if you're audited for your performance, if you look inside of the company mission statement and you do what the company mission statement is, it's a lot easier for you to bring that up when you talk to the manager. Hey, this is what I've been doing. This is I've been carrying on our mission. Blah blah blah. Just tell them so. This is a real easy way to link it back to yourself. So please to keep that in mind, and also try to figure out who's your boss, when you're going to start, this, that, and the other. Okay, this is something else you want to pay attention to that may not be in the handbook, but it could be. So figure out there's different locations. Okay, and this is why I asked this. So it could be in the handbook that there are different locations. I have seen this before. So when you're looking inside the handbook and it tells you, hey, we have this location over here, this location over here. If you don't pay attention to this in the interview and you don't ask the question, you may do training at one location, but you may be sent to a different location to work. So do keep that in mind when you ask them that. It's like, hey, am I going to remain at this location? Or am I going to get training over here? What exactly am I going to do? This is usually in the handbook. You get asked them this question. And then a lot of the times, what I used to do when I did work for companies that were like this was like, okay, if I'm working over here and I've reached 40 hours, okay, and then what you can do is ask your boss or call over to the other place and say, hey, I work 40 hours. Do you guys need any help over here? This is an easy way to get overtime. Many people don't pay attention to this. This is a real easy way to get overtime. Is like, hey, do you guys need help over here? Guess what? You go over there and you work. You work, make some extra money. Why not? Do it. It's easy to do. And it's something you really want to pay attention to is like, you definitely want that. It's like, if you're looking for extra hours, instead of working part time, you can really do a lot of extra work. And then if you're trying to build inside the company, that's a good way to do it. It's like, this office, that office. So the people in both. So if someone leaves or a boss gets fired or whatever, it's much easier for you to wiggle your way into a higher position by doing that because you're volunteering for something majority, and I would say 95% people are not doing. So please do keep that in mind. Is That's an easy way to get overtime if you ask for it. And look, you keep asking for it, they're going to keep telling you no. One time they may tell you yes, take the opportunity if you can. Take the opportunity and do the best you can because that will open a door. Because a lot of times they may say, man, we really do need this guy a lot more. And then you may get extra hours by doing that. And I used to get comp time. So, like for example, this is a great example for myself. When I worked at the art of shaving, I did regular art of shaving. I did wholesale. So what that means is wholesale is basically you visit a place and you sell there instead of selling at uh, the actual store. So art of shaving, I would work there. Um, I think it was a part-time employee, so I think it was 28 and 32 hours. Normally, what I got, but this was in the handbook. So if you did wholesale, it wasn't considered overtime. It was a different assignment, but it had to have a minimum hours per month. So the best part is I was a part-time employee, but by doing wholesale, I was technically full-time. Like I was labeled as a part-time employee, but I did full-time by doing the wholesale hours, the minimum wholesale that I had. And I was the only one that would volunteer for it. And by doing that, I got a voucher for gas. So for example, if I had to drive all the way over there, they were like, okay, track the mileage and we'll give you money for gas as a voucher. This is something else that you can ask and look in the handbook. That's something that they offer you. For example, if you're working at one office and you're looking at another office, you want to work over there. Is like, all right, how much gas? And then you tell them, hey, can you guys pay? Because right now gas is really expensive. This is before gas was expensive. This was like 5 years ago. So yeah, this is definitely before gas was. No, excuse me, this was 3 or 4 years ago. So this is definitely not too far along in the tooth here. So they would give me a voucher to get gas. Like they would reimburse me. I just had to turn in my receipts and say this is the mileage that I had. And then okay, cool. And then they would sign off on it. I'd sign off on it, and then it would be reimbursed. They would do it in a check. So like whenever my check would come in, it would be reimbursed on my check. And then a lot of times, if I remember correctly, it was on the normal check. It wasn't on my commission check. So that was something else to pay attention to. All right. So this is something you really want to pay attention to. And I did take advantage of that as a part-time employee. So I was a part-time employee, but I would also do wholesale, and that was a minimum. I can't remember the minimum off the top of my head, but it had a minimum hours I had to do. So that was perfectly okay with me. I wasn't upset about that. I really did enjoy that, and I got to meet a lot of wonderful people working at Macy's doing wholesale for them. I think I made 2 or 3 sales, but they weren't a lot. I think it was like $100 sale. That was like a $200 or $300 sale, and that was it. But I did talk to people and got to like chit chat or whatever and talk. So that was really fun. I did enjoy that, and then I got to meet a lot of fragrances, which has really got me into fragrances. You guys are like, why is this guy like fragrances? Is because when I was doing wholesale at Macy's, they had Chanel, they had golly, they had Montal, they had I'm trying to think off the top of my head. It's not coming to me. But there was a whole bunch of fragrances there at Macy's, as they generally are. So I basically got entrenched in Macy's. It was like I'm talking to this, and they're doing wholesale too. So we're talking and whatever. Hey, smell this, smell that. And man, oh man, was it awesome! I really did enjoy that part of it. It was really great. Okay, so going back to the handbook, this is specifically for sales. If you're selling stuff, you have to realize in the handbook, a lot of times it will tell you how much percentage is. So, like for example, if you're selling whatever it is you're selling, so you're going to have 4%. Sometimes it depends on how much you sell. But when I first started working in artist shaving, if I remember correctly, it was 3 or 4%. So, like for example, whatever you sold, you got 3 or 4% of the entire thing that you sold. And then they start restructuring it where it was like, if you sell this, it's 6%. If you sell that, it's 2%. If you sell this, it's 4%. And then they would combine all that together and then give you an extra bonus check. But not really bonus check, it's a commission check. So please do keep that in mind. A lot of times that's found within the handbook as well. So you kind of figure out, okay, how much is what, how much is this, how much is that. So that's something you really want to pay attention to. All right. So this leads me to something else. So before you go into the interview, this is nothing to do with the handbook. This is I'm pretty much done with the handbook off the top of my head. Yeah. So all right. So just so I will say this is pay attention to before you go to interview. Like let's say you feel like the interview and you're like, man, I don't know if they bullshitted me or not. Easiest way you can do is try to jump on LinkedIn and figure out who's worked there in the past. You just type in LinkedIn and then you can send them a message and say, hey, what happened and what's this and what's that. So the reason why I'm doing these lives is because like this live right now is because my wife is trying to find jobs. So like this is me talking to her and telling her what to do, but I'm doing this in English instead of in Spanish. So I'm talking to you in English right now. So, but anyway, obviously, but anyway, sorry, yeah. Anyway, so it's easy way to do is reach out to LinkedIn and you tell them, hey, um, do these guys train? So they a lot of times you guys know this. They will bullshit you in the interview, which is why you want to try to ask as many questions as you want. Like I like pissing people off like toward the end of the interview because I'm gonna ask a lot of questions. Like I'm not just gonna come like, oh, some people are like, oh my god, it's a job, please give me a job. And I've been in that where I've been where I need it, but a lot of times I'm just like, I don't need it. So I have my pick and choose. So I've done this before where I've messaged someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, what is their training process like? And what I mean by that is like, for example, some companies are like, hey, today's your first day, and then they just throw you into it. Like you have no idea what you're doing, and you're just like, dude, I have no idea what I'm doing. And you guys just like threw me into this. And I think companies do that for two reasons. Can you swim or swim? You throw you into the sharks, throw you into the fire, whatever you want to say. How's this person react? What is they're trying to figure out who you are as a person. So this is something to ask a previous employee. And the second thing is it structured? For example, if you're doing training, okay, they have an SOP. They have this documentation. Okay, we train them on this, it's initial. We train them on that, it's initial. And at the bottom, okay, we sign. Okay, this is complete. Your training is complete, and then now you can work. But what we'd recommend that you do is do shadow hours. So, for example, you've done your training, but now we want you to shadow for a certain amount of time. That will be signed off. Then you can work. So I've seen it done before where people just throw someone in and they have no idea what they're doing. And then you also have specific training. So, for example, when I first started selling gym memberships when I was younger, way younger, I would say about 10 years ago now, I started to work at a gym. And there was no formal training on how to sell stuff. I had to figure it out. And then I had to ask my boss and then ask the sales manager how to sell. And then I had to watch. I had to look at everything and watch what they were doing. And that is something that you really have to pay attention to is the training in a place. Because if you're a person that likes structure and you want to be helped, like when you first go in and you're like, man, I really need help. I really want to figure out what I'm doing and they don't train you, you're going to be extremely dissatisfied. You're going to be like, dude, I want to be here. Fuck you guys. That's exactly what you're going to be like. You're going to do, fuck you guys. I want to be here. I want to go somewhere else. And that's exactly how you're going to feel. And you don't really want to feel that way if you can save it, I guess you could say. If you kind of figure this out before then. If you reach out on LinkedIn and you talk to them like, hey, what happened? How was the training? Did you get training? Did they try to move you around a different location? You can ask all these things. Going back to a point that I made earlier, that's something that you really can pay attention to. All right. So, and then on top of that, you can look where the person left afterward. So, for example, if you're looking, you type in the search bar and you figure out, okay, like let's say they're working at a consulting firm, right? You type in, okay, you look, okay, they work there, you click on it, and then you figure out, okay, where do they move to afterward? Hello, that wherever they move to afterward, a lot of the times you can look at that and you say, oh my god, like I can go apply here too, or oh my god, they're the manager. You reach out to them, and sometimes that gets you an interview doing that. You may think I'm crazy, but hey, who doesn't ask doesn't eat. So please do keep that in mind. Ask. You can't do everything on your own. Many people think, oh, I'm the greatest, and dude, no one got. You have to do things. You have to partner up with people. You can't just do stuff on your own. A lot of times, you're going to be really mistaken and waste a lot of time if you try to do things on your own. And do keep that in mind. So try to keep your options open. And that's another thing you can do is ask them. Like, for example, if they're doing the same position that the new company is, what is the difference between the two of them? Is it worth going to the old company? Is it worth going to the new company? What is your opinion on that? And that's something you can ask. Like, it's open to anyone. You can just message somebody on LinkedIn, and you can figure it out. Um, that's something else that I'd strongly recommend is pay attention to that. Okay. Um, and then another thing that I would strongly recommend is try to keep the resume that you have updated. I would say at least every quarter. So, for example, a lot of times they'll have quarterly awards of employees. Okay, update whatever you did for the company inside the resume. This is what I did. This is how much I saved the money company. This is whatever you did. Try to update the resume as you go along. That's the easiest way to do it instead of like, oh my God, because this is going to stop you from getting a job. I've seen this so many times. People just like, they've worked at a place for like 5 years and like, oh my God, dude, like, I don't even want to touch this resume. I don't want to do anything with it because there's so much stuff that I haven't, and this will stop that from happening. This will stop that from happening if you do this. If you usually do it every, I would say 3 or 4 months, you go in, I would say 3 months minimum, 4 months maximum. So you go in every 3 months and you say, okay, what have I done? And then you go in and you update the resume. And you update the resume. So when it comes time to, dude, fuck this shit. Or, dude, I'm going to try to find somewhere else to work. Or, you know what, I'm going to go and try to see if I can be a manager. The resume's sitting there. It's ready for you to just send out. You don't have to, you don't have to go in and revise the entire thing. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Oh my God. I have seen some people just stick to a job because they're like, I don't really want to go through and do that. Which leads you to another thing. When you start a new job, start journaling everything that you do. Journal it. Everything that you do. This is a way to keep tabs on what you're doing. So if they try to come to you during an audit and you say, well, here's my bullets. This is exactly what I've done. You go and you do that. Like everything you've done. And it's like, this is what I've done. And then it also makes it easier if you make these bullets and you journal what you're doing, you can say, okay, so when it comes down to the resume, you're looking at the journal. These are what I've done for the company. So you just put that in the resume. It's real easy to do that. And if you guys want, I can do a video on that where I can show you how to make bullets. I can show you how to add it into a resume. I can do all that if you want me to show you how to do that. But that's a real easy way to keep track of what you're doing. Okay. And that's something that a lot of people don't do. They don't journal what they do. They don't journal anything. And then they don't update their resume until it's time for, oh, I'm looking for a new job. And it's like, oh shit, like I have to go through and update the entire resume. Oh my God, this sucks. Well, dude, come on, you guys. Come on. It's only you. You're responsible for your life. So please keep that in mind. And this leads me to something else. Okay. And I've seen this on resumes because I was a boss. Have a professional email. You know, don't put like throatgoat at gmail.com. Don't put like throatgoat at gmail.com. Don't put twerker, whatever, at yahoo.com. Don't have a very standard, very easy to read email address. If they read something where it's like totally crazy, they're not going to hire you. They're going to look at that and go, yeah, we're going to pass on that one. So please do keep in mind, you want to have a professional email if you can. All right. This is something else that I strongly recommend. If you have social media, and I did this as a boss, if you have any kind of social media, do not put your phone number as something where someone can find you. For example, if you look on Facebook and you type someone's phone number in, you can find their profile. And you start looking at their profile, okay, what is this person? Is this person crazy? Is this person good? Do they like their family? You can find a lot of information doing this. You can do it with an email address too. Okay, I put the email address in Facebook, put the email address on Instagram, or the phone number on Instagram. You can find people doing that. So if you don't want to be found, put your stuff in private or use a different email address for business and a different email address for personal. So just keep that in mind. Like for example, on my Facebook, I don't use my actual name. I don't use my real name. I use a different name so people can't find me. I've never put my phone number on there, never put my email on there. I use a bullshit email, so all the Facebook traffic goes to that email. So that's something that it's gonna be more difficult to find me by because of that. Whereas if I have my name on there, my phone number, my email, and it's in the resume, they could just pull that up and look for you, and they can look at everything you've done. Because many people, they don't private anything; they just have it public. Where okay, they're posting this, they're posting that. What are they doing? They can really get a grasp of who you are before they bring you in. So that's something else you want to pay attention to. All right. So now that we're on resumes, so that's a big thing. Please do keep that in mind. What I just said is extremely important. All right. Another thing you can do is, and I've heard this and I've seen this by hiring people, there's a job description for a reason. If you're applying to a job, look in the job description because more likely than not, what they're going to do is in your resume, they're going to hit Control F and they're going to look for certain keywords inside that description. If those words do not match inside of your resume, Control F, and they're looking for you, you're not going to get called because those words are not inside of your resume. They're going to hit, like, for example, if they're looking for a project manager, they're going to put Control F and they're going to hit project and okay, how many projects? If you're a project manager and you have nothing in there about projects, guess what? You're effed. If they're looking for a manager and you have no management experience inside of anything that you're doing, like anything in your resume, um, you're not going to get that call back. So pay attention to the job description. Pay attention to the job description and try to add parts of that job description into your resume. That's something you really can do. Okay. That is the best way to get hired. Because I have done this myself, or before in the past when I was a boss, is I would look in the resume and if I saw certain keyword, all I would do is hit Control F and look for certain words. That's exactly what I would do based upon the PD or the job description that I was looking at. And if I'm looking at it and all right, cool. So like for example, if I get 50 job, so I've done this before. I get 50 job offers, okay? You know, and then you hit Control F. And I'm serious. I can eliminate 20 to 30 people just by hitting Control F and looking for a description. Because they have like a cookie cutter resume and they don't pay attention to the job description. Hit Control F and then you cut out 20 to 30 people like that because they don't have what you're looking for. I have done that. So please do keep that in mind when you're looking at resume. You know, keep, like I said, update the resume every 3 or 4 months. But when you go into a job, look in the job description and take out or add in parts of the job description into your resume. Because the more of those keywords that they're looking for, because they'll give you the requirements of what they're looking for in the job description. And all you're going to do is add those requirements into your resume somewhere where it fits inside of your bullets, and you're good. And you're good. When they hit Control F and they start looking for stuff, they can find it. And that's a good thing. And then all you got to do after that is just pay attention to what you're going to do. And what I mean by that is, for example, I have been a boss in a situation, okay? And you have the same resume here and the same resume here. And you're reading both of them. And you're like, dude, these people are equally qualified. And I mean equally qualified. All right. And you're like, dude, I really don't know which one to hire. Like, this is going to be so challenging trying to figure out who to hire. So I have been in this position. And honestly, what you can do is during the interview, try to gauge the personality of the person. Okay. For example, I'll give you an example. If the place you work at is really laid back and you guys are joking, joyful, this, that, and the other, the person that has that qualification, that's the person you should hire. If you hire someone the exact opposite than what your culture is, for example, if you have that jovial, joking, this, that, and the other kind of thing, and you hire someone very serious and very strict, that's going to be an immediate conflict. And I mean an immediate conflict. It's going to be a conflict with the people you work with because they're not like strict and they're not like that. You know, they're more jovial. They're more, you want to really pay attention to that. That's one way to weed out something. And that's something you want to do in an interview. And that's why I asked, and I think the interview or the live show number 2 was the fact that pay attention to what I just said is, what is the culture like? If you're a serious person, and I mentioned this earlier about training. If you like training, pay attention. Do they train you or not train you? Do they throw you into the fire? What exactly do they do? You're trying to figure out the culture, and they're trying to figure out the culture in you. Because, like I said, they may have two resumes, that's the exact same thing. How is this person? How does this person handle jokes? They may try to like be jovial with you, joking, try to see, are you a serious person? Are you? Can you take a joke? What? They're trying to figure you out just like you're trying to figure them out. It's kind of like a first date in a way. You're trying to figure out what they're trying to figure you out. What is going on? So please do keep that in mind. It's something you definitely want to pay attention to. And hold on one second. Let's see here. All right. All right. So, all right. So I've done the resume, and another thing at the bottom of the resume is if it's more than about 7 years old, don't put it on there. If it's more than 7 years old, don't put it on there. And the easiest way that I can say this is, for example, you have military service. Many applications will have a section specifically designed for that. It will say, do you have military service? Yes. And then it will ask for your qualifications. It'll ask for their appropriate information inside of that. So, for example, if you served maybe 4 years or 6 years or 7 years and you had a contract and you got out and you're, 20 years on from that, a different experience, you can add that as in the PD or on the PD, but in that section about that. So that's something you really want to pay attention to. All right. And this is something else I'd recommend. Anywhere you've ever lived, keep it for about 8 years, 7 to 8 years. Okay. So, because every application is going to usually ask you, where did you work at? So keep the address and the place of ever you worked at for about the last 8 years or so. This is easy. You just hold it inside of a folder in a computer, and you put places worked at, and then you put addresses and the name. So the address and the name is right there, and the phone number. You pull it up, and then you put it in there, and you can just take it in the application and put it in there instead of going like, oh shit, I don't remember. And then you have to look it up. And then what happens if the business went out of business? What happens if it's gone? Like, for example, Art Shaving is gone. If I didn't have that address, I would have to figure that out. I have to go back over there and look because I don't remember it off the top of my head. So the easy thing you do is put it in a folder, have a Word document. Okay, these are the places I've worked at. This is the address. This is the phone number, and this is it. So that's something else you really want to pay attention to when you're doing applications and resume stuff. Is like, where is the address? What is the phone number? Yeah. And the other thing that I would recommend is, please try to put on the resume, please put about things that are going to benefit the company. Like, don't make it towards like a 20-page resume. Like, try to pay attention to what you're trying to get. Don't make it about anything else. For example, and this is something else I saw that used to just like, I would automatically just not pay attention to it. If I look under education, if I look, I'll say this again. If I look under education and I see you have high school, bachelor's, and master's degree, I'm not hiring you. Why? If you have a bachelor's degree, why are you putting high school? If you have a master's degree, why are you putting bachelor's? Why? It's implied. If you made it to the other degree, why would you put the previous one? It doesn't make sense. And I take this basically like I did in high school. When I completed 10th grade, I was a junior. I was an 11th grader. If I complete 11th grade, I'm a 12th grader. I'm no longer 11th grade. I'm no longer a junior. I'm a senior now. It's the exact same way that I've taken a resume. If you put everywhere you worked at on there, on the resume, I'm automatically not going to do that. I would do that all the time. I would look into education. That's another way I would weed out people. If you're too stupid to figure that out, it drives me crazy. I know that sounds maybe really, really pathetic, but it would drive me nuts. Dude, pay attention to that. Pay attention. Come on, you guys. Look on there. It says high school, bachelor's, master's. Automatically throw this resume out of here. I'm sorry. If they're not smart enough to realize they have gone up in life as far as what they're supposed to do, and that doesn't necessarily mean bachelor's or master's. You can have associates on there too. If you have, for example, you have a trade school, you don't have to put high school anymore. Unless that was a part of your training and you haven't gone to trade school yet, but put trade school in there. And then certifications, okay? Figure out any certifications you need. For example, if you have experience and you want to move up into a business, try to do the certification. Do the certification. Put that in there somewhere, like in the description at the very top somewhere. This is the certification that I've done. This is why I'm doing it. Do that. It will help you, please. If you're looking for a certification, like if it's a end all be all, for example, if you're doing project management and they need PMP, if they don't see PMP on your resume, more likely than not, see you later, sayonara, because that's a requirement that they have. If they see PMP associate, okay, maybe he doesn't have the 3 years that we're looking for, but he has some kind of experience. So maybe we may not want him for a project manager, but we want him for a project coordinator. And I've seen this before where I've done an interview and I kept the guy's resume and called him back later and we hired him. We hired him because the other person didn't work out, or the job specifically I have right now is not a good fit. But the one that may be coming open, the one that could come open down the line, I'll call this person up. Hey, this is a great opportunity for you. Let me call you up. So I have done that before as well. All right. This leads me to the last part of this. In the context, in the references that you use, I can't stress this enough. Please ask the people before you put them on there. Okay? I would strongly suggest that. Please ask the people before you put them on the resume. I have called references and they're like, what? Who? Yeah, dude. Like, and this goes back to updating the resume. I have looked at names and you see the number on the side there and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, I call this person, hello, is such and such there? Oh no, we don't have it. So you failed to update the number inside the resume. That's kind of important if I'm calling a reference. If I'm calling a reference and you don't update the number, how am I supposed to talk to the reference? That doesn't make any sense. You know, that's something else that you can do. And really, what you want to do is try to find a coworker or boss that you have worked for and ask them if you can use them as a reference. And don't get offended if they tell you no. If they tell you no, okay, fuck you then, no problem. No, then I will look for someone else to use as a reference, no problem. So that's something you can do, is pay attention to that as well. And always make sure you put at least 3 references. That is what I would recommend. And what I would also recommend is the references on there, try to make them right. And what I mean by that is, for example, was it a boss? Was it a boss's boss? Was it a coworker? That is something that I would strongly suggest. And try to keep it more modern. And what I mean by that is the last 7 years, try to find someone in that 7 years that you've worked with that will vouch for you pretty much. That's what I'm talking about. Don't keep someone on there for 10 years and it's like, oh, unless you've really worked with them and y'all have been followed around, like, oh, we've worked here together. So they have a really good idea. But like, for example, if you work somewhere for 3 years and then it's 8, 9 years later and you're working somewhere else, you still have them as a reference, that's not a good idea. I have seen this. So you guys think, man, this is really basic. This is stupid. No, I'm telling you the truth. I have seen this with my own eyes and I'm like, dude, like, this is wild. Like, this is crazy. Please keep in mind, some companies, they will ask for a personal reference, and they do this to figure out sometimes what kind of person you are. So they may call you. They want to call a friend that you have, a mentor you have, something like that. They want to call and ask questions like, "How's this person? How is whatever?" They're trying to figure out, gauge who you are. Some companies really care about that. They care about who you are. So they may ask for one personal reference so they can call them and ask. So please do have that in mind. Is okay, these are my professional references, and then some may have like a personal one to figure out, okay, because I've had this before where they've asked stuff like that. I'm like, this is kind of weird, but okay, I've had that before. That may be legal, I don't know. But I have had that been asked me before. Um, yeah. And something else that you can do is on LinkedIn is when you go in for a second or third interview, which I've done this before. I've had a company where I interviewed like 3 or 4 times, and then I finally got rejected. And I mentioned that in Livestream #2 because of a question that I didn't ask. And this is something you really want to pay attention to. If they give you the name of the next interviewer, look it up on LinkedIn. and you can ask them, hey, who's going to be interviewing you? You know, when you go to interview, you can go with a pen and a piece of paper. You can write stuff down. They're writing stuff down. Why can't you bring it in? You know, certain people, they're so afraid of like a boss and stuff. Like, no, you're working for this person. Like, they need you. That's why you're sitting there. You can question them. You can bring these stuff in. You know, okay, well, who's gonna be interviewing me next? And you write the name down. Okay, cool. And you go to research on that person on LinkedIn. Look at them. Okay, they went to this university. This is their background. This is their experience. You kind of figure out who they are. Um, don't make it creepy in the interview. Yeah, I know this. You know, just be like, oh, okay. You know, just kind of shine it on. Okay, okay. And then based upon their experience, you can ask them questions about the company, the culture, and all that kind of stuff by doing research. So that leads me to the next thing: is do research on the company. I mentioned this in live stream number 2, but I can't stress this enough. Do research on the company. Please, please, please do research on the company. It is definitely something that you really want to pay attention to. And that is something that's either going to make or break what you want to do. You know, a lot of times in our life, and you'll notice this, okay? I had this before where you have gotten to a certain level and you're like, you know what, should I open an LLC and do my own thing? Okay. That's maybe something you want to consider is put on there. Is like on the resume is like, do I want to work for myself? And or do I not want to work for myself? You may come across that in your life and just realize that the tools that you have to use and try to do as much research as you can to take that into effect. Okay. Something you really want to pay attention to is if you've reached that in your resume life where you're like, should I go and do my own business or should I go and keep doing what I'm doing? Which one should I take? And it may not necessarily be wrong, depending on whichever path you want to go down. Everything is a trade-off in life. There is nothing that's not. There's a benefit and a downside to everything. Nothing is black or white, generally speaking. As far as that goes, you're going to have a trade-off somewhere, and that's something you're just going to have to deal with. And I would strongly suggest, and I've seen this before too, is people that were self-employed, they try to go somewhere else. I've seen it being held against them. Like, for example, the person who's interviewing is a jealous bitch, and they they won't hire you because, oh well, he's gonna be a narcissist, he's gonna be an asshole, he's gonna be whatever. And I have seen that kind of attitude before with people that have been self-employed or had their own business and then it failed or they sold it or whatever, and they get treated really poorly. And I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Um, I've also seen it in favor where they've gotten hired and not just hired. And I mean, not just like a regular employee, they're like a manager, they're whatever. I've seen that too because they're like, oh man, you have this experience. Like, okay, dude, let's put you in. And you're like, why would you do that? They failed, but maybe it was the wrong time. Maybe it was the wrong culture. Maybe it was, there's so many reasons why things fail and people don't ever take that into consideration. A lot of the times they're like, why did it fail? Like they never pay attention to like, what was the steps? Why, was it the wrong time? Was it the wrong culture? There's so many things you can throw into that. And what my main point of this is, don't be afraid to put that you work for yourself on your resume. The LLC. Consider it a. I'm trying to think in my head the best word to use this. Try to consider it a benefit if you can, regardless of how it ended up. That's something that I would strongly suggest. And don't ever give up on that. Like if that's how it happened, then you can because they may ask you questions. Just have questions and talk about what happened. Like you don't have to go into war and peace. Just kind of like have a set of answers in your head because they may ask you, why did it fail? What happened? This, that, and the other. And you're like, okay, well, such and such. But you can flip it on the other side too. As well, this is what I did. This is the services I offered. This is how I did this. This is how I did that. So on and so forth. So you have, instead of them when they ask you these negative questions and you're just being negative, you could tell them, well, we did this, we did that, but for some reason the company just didn't work out. It wasn't the right time, whatever. Just make it real brief, but you can tell everything you did to benefit the company while you were working there, or you had it open, and then you don't really have to give so much shine on the negative. People generally remember the opening and closing of things. They don't really remember the middle. So please do keep that in mind. So if they ask that question, keep the answer in the middle is why it failed, and then do on the both sides as far as the benefits that you gained while you were there. That's more or less what I would do if I were you doing an interview. So, all right, you guys, I am 45 minutes into this, and no one's joined, unfortunately. So, hopefully, this suits you guys well. So, I'm going to post this here, and I got to get out of here. I got to go do stuff. So, y'all have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. And I'm going to have more videos coming out. Right now, I'm fixing probably to go make some videos. So, with that being said, y'all have a wonderful day, and thank you for visiting the fellow gent. And I'm going to have my Instagram link down in the description. And if I haven't entered your description today, hopefully it's the day that I enter your description. And y'all have a wonderful day.